And Circle of Life in Jesus' Name, Part 2, Chapter 28. Jordan chatted with Three's aunts as they worked together in the kitchen. She was tired, really sleepy, and thought there was still traces of the drug in her body. Breeze and Bella were sisters, and they were very sweet, especially Bella, Logan's mother. Jordan knew the woman had been abused as a wife, and Logan had to shoot his own biological father to protect her. It made Jordan think about Josie and how afraid she was of her own biological father. Hopefully, she'll never have to see him again. Jordan, you must be tired, sweetie, Bree said. Jordan smiled at the younger of the two sisters. I am. Bree smiled. Why don't you go get that gorgeous guy of yours and make him go to bed? Are you staying the night here? Yes, ma'am, but I have to leave extra early because I have softball practice in the morning before class. I can't wait to come and see you play, Bella said. Jordan grinned. We should have a pretty good team this year. So, Bree said, what was young Eric's reaction when he watched the videos today? Jordan frowned. Well, when he watched the video from the club, he didn't say much at all, just kind of nodded his head. When he watched the video from the body cams of the cops, I could tell he was shaken up, so, like, maybe reliving the moment? I mean, think about it. He's confused about what he did that was making them so intent on arresting him, and at the same time, I'm passed out in the front seat, and he's probably worried about me. And then, the video from the fight in the jail, he was completely silent and still, so I'm not sure. I haven't had any alone time yet to really find out what he's feeling about all of that. The footage from me when I left the hospital, all he did was give my hand a squeeze. The video of the sermons given by his mom and dad, he got pretty emotional. He did say that they were giving him more credit than he deserved. So he's kind of down on himself, Bella said softly. Yeah, and I don't know what to do or say to make him feel any better. Well, just be there for him, Breeze said. We may not need you to do anything, but he may not need you to do anything. But just listen, understand, and be there while he works things out on his own. But he won't be on his own because he's training with his grandfather, and if anyone can get through to him, he can. Jordan nodded. Thanks. I will take your advice and just listen. She looked around the kitchen. What else needs doing? Bella shook her head. We're pretty much done. Jordan smiled. Mrs. Keno sure is lucky to have two daughters-in-law like you. Well, we're lucky to be part of her family, but we don't call it luck. We're so blessed. Blessed to be married to two of the most wonderful men in the world. Blessed to have Shelley and Eric as our in-laws, and blessed to have the opportunity to serve them in some way. Because before all this happened this year, they were the ones always doing for everyone else. And it feels good to be able to help them for a change. Jordan smiled. I just love this family. We just love you, Bree said brightly. Young Eric has chosen well. She went to the table where her children and niece were coloring. Hey, you guys, let me go see what your fathers are doing, and then be ready to put all this away because we have to get home. It's past your bedtime. Ledger yawned. I don't want to go home. Okay, fine. You stay here, Breeze answered. Okay, fine, he repeated. Jordan laughed, then turned to go find Three. She stopped, though, when she spotted him. He and Jojo were huddled together on the couch, their heads bent. Jojo had his hand on Three's shoulder as they seemed to be praying. She shook her head in wonder. These people, they really lived their beliefs. Did all Christians do that? She already knew the answer to that because most of the girls on her team believed in Jesus, but they didn't exactly live or act very holy. But, Jordan thought, everyone is in their own stage of belief and faith, and she shouldn't judge. But, she was thinking, she would ask Three what he thought about that. She heard the rumble of male voices and turned as Cam and Joey and Mark Adams emerged from the hall that led to Grandmaster Keno's study. Jojo and young Eric looked up. Okay, let's gather the fam for a little powwow, Mark said. Eric's upstairs with Shelley putting the kids to bed, Bella replied. Mark nodded. We can wait a few minutes. Let's all go in the living room. He walked over and grabbed Em. Hey, baby girl, what you doing? I'm making a picture. It's beautiful. Can I have it? No, it's for young Eric. Oh, well, he's going to love it. Em smiled. I make you one too, Daddy. Okay, but let's move this coloring session into the living room. They quickly relocated the children to sit on the floor around the coffee table. Ledger pushed his paper aside, went to his dad, and crawled up in his lap. Joey held him against his shoulder, and in only a few minutes he was sound asleep. Jordan squeezed in next to 3. So, tell me about how the game went, young Eric asked. Not much to tell, JoJo said. We totally dominated. Our tight end got hurt, though. It's not too bad, but he'll miss this next game. What were your numbers? 23 for 29, 79%, almost 12 yards average. 304 yards total for passing TDs, and I rushed for 1, but had 1 pick. Young Eric shook his head. Man, you just can't get it right, can you? Everyone laughed. Really, JoJo, that is phenomenal, young Eric said. We have a really good team this year. They're making me look good. They all looked up as Eric and Shelley came downstairs. Good, Mark said. Everyone have a seat, please. We need to talk. I'll begin, Joey said. We got some stills from the video at the club and ran them through the facial recognition database and got hits on both. We sent 2 agents to tag along with the police to pick them up. As of a few minutes ago, they're in police custody. We wish we could have gotten to them before the cops, but it didn't work out that way. Still, we trust the detectives who are questioning them, and we might have info on Perez as soon as tonight. If we get it, we'll go after him immediately. Fingers crossed on that one. Also, we got the to-go cup from young Eric's car, and it matches Jordan's blood work. It was definitely ketamine. Young Eric, your car is a mess. We're having it cleaned, and it will be delivered to you by morning. Thanks, Uncle Joey. Next, Mark began, Jamal White, 21, just turned 21 4 days ago, student at USC, arrested for public intoxication. I'm guessing it was a birthday celebration of becoming legal to drink that went south. I'll get in to speak with him first thing in the morning. After I get his story, I'll be able to tell you what we can do for him. I'm guessing I'll be able to get it dismissed because the state will have to prove that he was either a danger to himself or to someone else. Now, Jordan Kingston, not quite as easy. He was driving a stolen car and had possession of a firearm. Again, I really need to hear his side, and then we'll go from there. I know you need to speak to them, but can you at least get them out on bail or bond or however that works? Young Eric asked. Probably, though it will depend on their family situation. Well, let me be their family for now. I'll post bail. Mark nodded. Let me get back to you in the morning. Eric, you might have to give him a little time off training to make a call or 2 tomorrow morning. Eric Sr. nodded. I think we can handle that. Okay, good. That's it for now. Everyone, take care. Have a good week. Joey, you got anything? Just confirming that, Jordan, you're spending the night here tonight? Jordan nodded. Yes, sir. I've been assigned Bree's old room. Joey laughed. You seem excited about that. She's just my big sister. No big deal. Jordan smiled. Anyway, Agent Trout will be here at 7 a.m. to get you to your apartment and then to practice. He'll check with you about your schedule for the week. Thank you. You guys are awesome for doing this. For doing what? Keeping watch over young Eric's girl? Easy day. Before we dismiss, Eric Sr. said softly, let's have a family prayer. Everyone immediately bowed their heads. Miss Bella, he said, will you honor us? She looked up surprised. Oh, yes, I'd love to. Mark smiled at his wife. He bowed his head and listened to her sweet prayer. You could feel her love and concern for everyone in the family. It was a beautiful prayer, sweet and honest and humble. And after that, everyone called it a night. It had been a long and event-filled weekend. They'd had to take care of the business on the Sabbath day, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And they knew Jesus was down with that, and that he knew the intentions of their hearts. Young Eric walked Jordan to her door and kissed her goodnight. She frowned, even though they'd talked, and for a few minutes here and there he seemed like himself. She couldn't help but feel that there was something different about him. She smiled up at him. So, I'm staying in your mom's old room? Where are you staying? right next door in my dad's old room. She smiled at that, hoped it was an omen. Good night, 3. He kissed her softly. Good night, Jordan. He opened her door, ushered her inside, closed her door, turned and went to his room. New scene. Jordan slept hard for about 2 hours and then woke. Maybe it was because she slept almost the whole day, but she couldn't go back to sleep. 3 had been really tired. She was sure he was sound asleep. Rising from the bed, Jordan walked to the glass doors that opened onto a balcony that overlooked the ocean. She wondered how many times Brianna Adams did this same thing. And when she did, was she thinking about Ricky Keno in the next room? And even though she denied him for 9 years, like she'd said in her talk, did she still think about him and dream about him and desire him? Jordan opened the door and stepped out. There was a breeze blowing in off the ocean as usual. The smell of salt air reminded her of 3. She sighed. Everything reminded her of 3. It was impossible to sleep knowing how much she'd longed for him all day, and now he's right next door to her. Making the decision, she went back inside, through the room, out the door, into young Eric's door. Stealthily, she turned the knob, opened the door, and stepped inside. Jordan, is that you? She closed her eyes, relishing the sound of his masculine voice. Yes, I'm sorry. Did I wake you? No, come in. I'm glad you're here. You are? Yes, I need you. He raised the covers. Come here, please. She came at once and scooted into bed beside him, immediately cuddled up close and snuggled up under his chin. He sighed. That's much better. Yes, it is, she said softly. His left arm came around her, pulling her even closer. He pressed his nose to her hair and breathed in. Whatever shampoo you use, it smells so good. Well, it was what's in the bathroom, but I'll remember to buy that kind from now on. He sighed. This feels so good, so right to have you beside me. You said you needed me. In what way? Well, in every way. And I do need you, like physically. But I've got that under control right now. I need you, well, emotionally, I guess. It's like being next to you, it heals me. It makes all the yearning go away. Oh, when you say stuff like that, it makes me feel so happy, so content. 3, I can't even imagine not having you in my life. And I feel the same way, 2, 3. I know we're young. I know I need to give us some time to get to know each other better, and I intend to do just that. Still, baby, I'm going to say this again. One day, I'm going to make love to you. And because you know me, you know what that means. You mean about the part where sex is reserved for marriage? Yes, that part. I'm going to give you some time before I ask you, Jordan, but I have every intention of eventually asking. And you're going to give me time because we're so young? Yes. And because really, we've only known each other for 3 weeks. It seems like much longer. It seems like forever, she said. You know, in your mom's talk today, she said your father knew almost immediately that he loved her. Yes, I know. And so that makes me think that it's okay for me, so quickly, to feel so in love with you. And your mom was only 18 and wasn't interested in being tied down to just one guy yet. Exactly. And I'm only a year older than your mom was. Correct. But there's a difference. Your mom didn't think she was in love with your dad. She didn't tell him that she loved him because she was unsure and because she wanted to date around and meet more people and have fun. The difference is, I do know that I love you. I've told you so many times now, and I have absolutely no desire to date around and try out other guys. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is no one better for me than you. I know it, and you probably think that too. You're just being cautious. You're being mature and responsible. I get that. So, I'm just saying, take as long as you want to take. I'll be here for you. Because I love you, Eric Keno III, and I will continue to love you. Unless you do a Jekyll and Hyde type thing and surprise the heck out of me. He shook his head. I don't know how God thinks I deserve you, Jordan Brooks, I hope to live worthy of your idealistic vision of me. He tilted her face up to him and kissed her gently. 3. He stroked her face. Yes, baby. Will you teach me about Jesus? He closed his eyes to defend against the tears. He sniffed, then opened his eyes and allowed the tears to escape. Does that upset you? She asked. He laughed quietly. No, baby, but you just made me the happiest guy in the world. The tears are just close to the surface after the past 24 hours. And yes, of course, I'll teach you about Jesus. He sniffed again. Where will you start? With his word. His word? The Bible. He shook his head in wonder and looked up toward heaven. Thank you, Jesus, he whispered. Well, it's late and I know you need to sleep, Jordan said, but just tell me one thing right now. What one thing? I don't know. You decide. Just tell me one thing about Jesus. Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you 2 things. First, he's real. I mean, he truly existed on the earth and still exists. And second, he's all about love. Real, unconditional love. That's beautiful. Every single part of the story of Jesus is beautiful, from his birth to his ascension and beyond. So beautiful. Jordan put a hand to his face. When you talk about it, your face shines. He smiled. Cool. She frowned and touched her own head and gave a soft moan. Are you okay? Yes. Jeffy said there would be some residual headaches and gave me some tea for it, but it seems to be coming back. Would you like me to go make you some more tea? Aw, 3, you're so sweet. No, I can deal with it. Okay, if you think so, he sighed. So tell me, when you're drugged, do you remember anything? No, it's all blank to me. Last thing I remember about last night was sitting in the car and asking you what was happening, and some lights were flashing in my face. And then when I woke up today, my mother was standing by the bed. And then I promptly threw up. I hate throwing up. He gave a soft laugh. Me too. Well, at least when you do, it's because you're doing something noble like training for the challenge. Eric shook his head. Aw, that's not so noble. Gabe's dad, Agent Tanner, he says training so hard until you throw up is nothing. It's the guys who throw up because they've just had half their leg blown off on the battlefield and then crawl over to pick their gun back up and take out more bad guys until they pass out. Now, that's noble. Wow, 3, that is a graphic scenario. Sorry, just keeping it real. I'm just saying that what I do is not that important. Okay, you got me there, but still, you are pushing yourself, pushing your body way past comfortable, testing yourself, testing your stamina. It's beautiful. I think it is anyway. Thanks, he sighed and kissed her one more time. Speaking of comfortable, turn over and onto your other side. She did and sighed as he wrapped his arm around her and pulled her close to spoon with him. Will you stay? He whispered in her ear. You're not worried about putting out fires? No, I'm feeling very much in control. Well, then I'm all yours. Thank you, Jesus, he said again, softly as he closed his eyes. New scene. It's September 30th, Monday morning, UCLA, Los Angeles, California. Agent Trout shook his head at Jordan as she approached. She was drenched in sweat. There was dirt on her face. Her large softball bag was slung over her shoulder. She was limping slightly, and she was not happy. Her cleats tapped on the pavement as she headed toward him after practice on her way to the locker rooms. She looked at him in the eye. She looked him in the eye, something not many clients did, and gave a sigh. Well, Agent Trout, I guess that was a sight to see. He shrugged. It wasn't so bad. Does the coach know what happened to you Saturday night? Well, I told her. I'm not sure what she's thinking. At this point, I don't really care. I'm just so tired. Well, I'm no doctor, but it seems obvious to me that you're not fully recovered from the drug. You were pretty sluggish out there. You think? And who trips over first base? Well, lots of people. Yeah, maybe, but not bad enough to actually injure themselves. How bad is it? She shook her head. Not that bad, really. I just hyperextended my knee a bit. I'll put some ice on it. I'll be okay. Sorry you had to witness that. He chuckled. Me too. He walked slightly behind her and to her left as she headed across the parking lot toward the building. He only caught a blur of someone running towards her, his arm raised. Jordan shrieked as Agent Trout gave her a shove, pushing her out of the way. He turned just in time to block the arm coming down, grabbing the man's wrist, twisting, and the large knife clanked onto the pavement. The force of the man's momentum brought Trout down, but he rolled, used his fist, and then elbow to knock him out, rolled the man onto his stomach, and looked up. Jordan, you okay? He asked, glancing around, looking for any other threats. Yes, I'm okay. What can I do? Nothing. Just stay right there. He grunted as he lifted up to remove cuffs from his belt. He secured the guy quickly. The team members and other students gathered around. Agent Trout asked him to stay back, and when a student started to retrieve the knife, he cautioned him to not touch it. He then pulled his phone and called Joey, who gave him implicit directions to not allow the campus police to touch anything and to wait for LAPD to arrive. He ended the call and went to check on Jordan. She was sitting on the pavement, rubbing her shoulder. Are you hurt? I think I scraped up my shoulder. He knelt beside her and gently raised the right sleeve of her t-shirt. He nodded. Yep, it's pretty scraped up. Road burn. Sorry, I must have pushed a little too hard. You saved my life, so I'm thinking you pushed just right. Trout stood and again asked everyone to stay back, and in only a few minutes the police arrived on scene. After Trout spoke with them, he watched to make sure they handled the scene correctly. He snapped off some pics for Joey, pics of the perp, of the knife, of the scene, and of Jordan's shoulder. He knelt back down. Looks like you're going to miss your morning class. She sighed. Well, maybe I can get a note from my agent. Yeah, not sure if that'll hold sway, but I'll be happy to speak with the professor for you. I can look very intimidating if I want to. Jordan laughed. The police finished their questioning of Jordan and eyewitnesses, who were mostly her teammates, and finally Jordan was allowed to leave. Agent Trout walked her to the building and then to the locker rooms. She went inside and changed and came back out, still limping. May I take the bag for you? Trout asked. Jordan nodded and handed it to him, and they headed toward his car. Her phone buzzed. Hey, 3. No, I'm okay. I really am. No, you don't have to come up here. Agent Trout is right here. Hold on. She put the phone on speaker. Okay, go ahead. He can hear you. Agent Trout, thanks for being alert. Just doing my job, Eric. You know that. Yeah, just thanks anyway. Is she really okay? Well, I scraped up her shoulder pretty good when I pushed her out of the way, but it's not her pitching shoulder, so there's that. She's limping, but that's from practice. She was struggling a little bit at practice, and I'll let her tell you the rest. Why were you struggling? Young Eric asked. I think I was dizzy, like once I got my blood going when I started running around, I think traces of the drug that were left in my body started circulating again. I felt lightheaded and dizzy, like I was running in a circle, and I tripped over first base in a very awkward way, and I think I hyperextended my knee. But I'm okay. Young Eric shook his head. You were going to come watch the big show tonight at the house, right? Yes. Why? Why don't you head there and rest? It sounds nice, but I have a class this afternoon, and I don't want to miss another class. I already missed this morning's class. I have to keep my grades up or I'll lose my scholarship. He wanted to tell her not to worry about it. He'd pay for her college, but he didn't dare. He sighed. Okay, well, after your afternoon class, what are your plans? Go to my apartment, gather up my dirty clothes, and do laundry. Okay, babe. Agent Trout, do you think there will be more threats? Probably. This guy, he seems intent on causing trouble. Whether he's aiming more for Jordan or for you, it's hard to say. I don't know if Joey has talked to you yet, but the 2 guys they picked up last night talked. No, Joey has not spoken to me yet, probably because he doesn't want to interfere with my training. Well, I'm not going to overstep my bounds then, Trout said. It doesn't matter who delivers the information, just tell me, please. Trout sighed. Okay, well, they talked. Perez is planning all kinds of things. They seemed to be aimed at Jordan. They were supposed to cut her brake lines last week, but they weren't able to get to her car. Oh, thank goodness you thought she should ride with you. Yeah. And Joey said, starting this afternoon, another agent is going to ride behind me. He thinks we need more eyes. And the guys who talked, did they know where Perez is? Young Eric asked. They knew only that he was driving a white Toyota, and we were able to pull video from outside the Chinese restaurant where the phone call was made when he phoned the police Saturday night. They saw the car, but were only able to get half a tag number. Still, the car doesn't belong to him, and no Toyota has been reported stolen with the tag number that begins with AJWX. 8JWX, which means it's probably being loaned to him. I don't understand why we can't find one guy who supposedly doesn't have any money. How can he continue to hide? How is he hiring these guys to hurt Jordan? It doesn't make sense. Well, Jason says he's smart but emotional. Smart enough to stay hidden, but emotional enough that he'll eventually make a mistake. Hopefully, he'll make that mistake before he's able to hurt Jordan anymore. How much money did he pay those guys that talked? Well, that's also strange. He didn't pay them. And they refused to talk about why they would do his dirty work for free. They did tell us that they had more assignments aimed at Jordan. You mean more than cutting her brake lines? Yep. Like what? Like tripping her as she goes down the concrete steps outside the college cafeteria. Mailing her sickening, disgusting descriptions of what Perez is going to do to her if he ever gets her alone. Blow white powder in her face to make her have to go to a doctor to make sure she wasn't exposed to some terrible disease. And that if they ever find her alone, to immediately grab her and bring her to him so that he can, quote, finish the job. Trout looked up at Jordan when she made the small sound. Her face had gone completely white. Hey, Jordan, it won't happen. You don't know that, she said, her voice shaking. He's tricky, and obviously he's gone full criminal. I don't know how I can, she began, then stopped abruptly. I don't feel too good. Trout dropped the big bag and scooped her up in his arms before she passed out. Hello? What happened? Young Eric said. Sorry, Eric, she passed out. Let me call you back. Jordan came to almost immediately, but Agent Trout carried her to his car, placed her in the front seat, and then drove back to gather her bag. He handed her phone to her. Here, you're probably going to need to call your guy back. She did. Jordan? Yes, it's me. Sorry, I got dizzy. Dizzy, right. So now, are you still thinking about going to that afternoon class? Yes, 3. I'm okay. Sorry that I sort of fainted. I just don't understand how I can inspire such hatred. Why does he hate me so much? Sorry, but it's just got to me. Well, I probably shouldn't have told you what those men said, Agent Trout added. No, you absolutely should have told us, young Eric said. We need to know, and I know Jordan would want to know that kind of stuff. Yes, it's hard for her, but she needs to know what we're up against. And he hates you, Jordan, because you put him in jail, and now you're trying to put him back in jail. But really, it's because he can't admit that he should have stopped drinking and gone back to work like a decent father and husband. People like that blame anybody and everybody except themselves. Hold on a second, Jordan. Young Eric turned and nodded at his grandfather. Yes, sir, understood. Let me just say goodbye. Jordan, I need to get back to work. Granddad was on the phone for a minute, but he's off now and waiting on me. You are still coming to the house tonight, right? I'll be there, 3. Agent Trout, take good care of her. I intend to, Agent Trout answered. She'll be at the house by 6. Awesome. And you're welcome to stay for dinner if you'd like. He chuckled. Thanks, but I actually have an appointment. A date? Oh, I'm being yelled at. Gotta go. Jordan giggled. I can't imagine Grandmaster Kino yelling at anyone. Well, it doesn't sound like yelling, but to me, he's screaming. And because I'm still on the phone, I'm guessing I have some ab work or wind sprints in my near future. Bye. Young Eric tossed his phone onto his bag, turned and came to his grandfather. Sorry, sir, it's hard to hang up when the girl you love has had her life threatened. Eric Sr. nodded and pointed at the captain's chair. Good try, truly. I'm going to need 200 elevated leg lifts. Young Eric's eyes opened wide. He thought it would be crunches. Easy day. He didn't dare argue. He nodded, drew a deep breath, and headed for the apparatus and began. While he was working on it, his grandfather spoke to him. While you were on the phone, I got a call. Young Eric grunted and nodded. Jake has just arrived at Camp Pendleton, and he's been given the evening free. He wants to come to our house to watch Gabe and Taylor and Logan. Young Eric smiled. Awesome, he responded, breathing hard. Did you lose count? His grandfather asked with a smile. He shook his head. 38, 39, he breathed. How long will he be at Camp Pendleton? 2 more weeks of training, and then he ships out to Afghanistan. I bet, he moaned and breathed. I bet Jojo would like to see Jake. Eric Sr. nodded. I texted him, invited him and his family, also invited Joey and his family. Young Eric didn't speak, only nodded as he concentrated on the last 50. He grunted several times, had to simply hang for a few seconds to allow the burn to stop. The last 10 were torture, but he finally ground it out and hopped down. He bent over to put his hands on his knees and immediately wished he hadn't done that as his stomach muscles began to cramp. Stretch it out, Eric Sr. commanded. Young Eric laced his fingers together and stretched his arms over his head, lifting his rib cage and breathing deep. He ended up going into a back bend, walked over and straightened, and finally the cramping started to ease. Grab some electrodes, at least half a bottle, and meet me on the mat. Young Eric bowed. Yes, sir. They worked for a while on sparring moves. Finally, Eric Sr. said, let's put these into action. He looked around the studio for someone working out that might be a good match for young Eric, but there was none. So he went to the front and came back with Master Foreman, who was a 7th Dan. Excuse me. Eric, Master Foreman, has agreed to spar with you for a few minutes before his next class. Young Eric nodded. I'll ref, his grandfather continued. Don't hurt him, he said with a smile to Master Foreman. No groin kicks, no throat or eyes. I know I just said to not hurt him, but really, don't hold back. They bowed to Grandmaster Keno and then to each other. And fight, Grandmaster Keno said. The others at the studio immediately saw and gathered round to watch. Eric Sr. had his brows raised. There was something different about young Eric. He was fierce. He was so fast. He was intent and focused. And next thing he knew, Master Foreman was on his back. Grandmaster Keno allowed young Eric to proceed instead of stopping the fight, since the challenge is no holds barred. He wanted to see if he would finish him while he was down. And young Eric dropped to the floor and threw an elbow to the diaphragm. Master Foreman was barely able to block it, but when he did, young Eric was able to move to his rear and put him in a chokehold. Grandmaster Keno stopped the fight, had them both rise and start again. Master Foreman knew he'd better give it his all now, and he put young Eric down 3 times, but didn't finish it, and young Eric rose and powerfully kicked to both the chest and then back of Master Foreman's head, and he went down again. Grandmaster Keno watched a few more seconds. Eric went immediately for the throat and had to stop when he remembered no throat. Master Foreman took advantage of that slip and kicked to young Eric's head, putting him on his back. Grandmaster Keno nodded and ended the fight. They both rose. Bow, Eric Sr. commanded, then turned to Master Foreman. What do you think? Master Foreman nodded. I think he's made a turn, and he's about to kick some major booty. He made me have to think. His kicks are strong. The one to the chest almost knocked me out because it took my breath. Good job, Eric. Young Eric didn't smile, only nodded. Thank you, sir. He bowed again. Thank you, Master Foreman, Grandmaster Keno said as he bowed to him. My pleasure, sir, as always. He bowed and turned to go teach a self-defense class for women in one of the smaller classrooms. Grandmaster Keno glanced at the time. It's almost lunchtime. Tell you what, let's grab some lunch and head home and finish your training on the beach. Young Eric nodded and bowed. Yes, sir. And that is the end of chapter 28.